Hi, this is Jay from Encodian. So in this video, we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into the Encodian trigger action that you'll find in Power Automate, which is a core part of the Encodian trigger product. So let's have a quick recap about how Trigr actually works. So the key component is the SPFX add-in, which is available across all of your SharePoint sites when deployed, which means that when you select one or more files, you can click here and you'll be able to click actions and you'll be able to select to start any of the configured trigger actions here. Now, what will happen, I should just add, is that actions add-in will display all of the actions that you configured within the admin portal. And for each one of these actions, they are mapped to a specific Power Automate flow. So what's going to happen is when you click start, in effect, all of the information, so context, so who you are, where you are, what library you're in, what items you've selected or what documents, all of that data is going to get passed by Encodian Trigr to the associated Power Automate flow. So in this example, this is the associated Power Automate flow. So again, if I just click on the Encodian Trigr in here, so share file, and you'll see that maps exactly to in here that says share file, and that's how that data is mapped. So again, whenever anybody across your SharePoint estate clicks on actions and clicks on that link, all of that context information is going to get passed through to this single Power Automate flow, and then you can use that data to go and obtain the selected file and file properties or list item or whatever it might be. And you'll notice in this example that I've already created that you can see that I'm using dynamic data. I've not got hard-coded values, and there's some gotchas that you need to watch out for when you're building your flows. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to go back to my flows. I'm going to create a new flow, and I'm just going to show you some of those gotchas and how to work around them. So I click Automated Cloud Flow. In triggers, I'll just type Encodian. When a user runs a trigger, that's what I would like. And I'm just going to give this an example demo, send email, demo, and I'll click new step, and I can do send email, and what I want to do is I'm going to send it back to myself nice and easy. So I'm going to use some of the dynamic data from the trigger, user email address. But now in the subject, what I decided, I might want to use some information from the SharePoint or the selected SharePoint file. So what I'm going to do get file properties. So let's see if I can get hold of the file name. And this is where some of these gotchas start. Well, the key gotcha is going to come in, and it's nothing to do with Encodian as such. It's just the way that Power Automate works when you're working with dynamic data. So in site address, I'm going to pop in site address. In library name, I'm going to pop in library name. And then in ID, I'm going to pop in the item ID. Brilliant. So go to my email, and I'm going to say the file title is issue. I can't see any of the dynamic data from get file properties. And this is simply because the way that the SharePoint actions work, it's not all of them, but some of them, I'd say most of them, they're dependent on knowing what's going to come back. So you have to pass in, when building the flow, actual data. So what we can do here is we can say, right, site address, bear with me, is a site that I'm going to select. I'm going to choose a library name within that site, documents. I'm just going to type an ID in. Now what's going to happen, because that data has been provided, and in effect, behind the scenes, Power Automate's going, okay, I know what data is going to come back now. I can click on File, and I will be able to see that dynamic data. So I can pop that data into my email. But obviously, this is now a hard-coded flow and totally defeats the point of Encodian Trigr, which means we want to build a flow once and make it available in lots of different places. Well, that's clearly not going to work because we've hard-coded it to one particular file. What we can then do after we've configured this is simply replace these values with dynamic ones. So enter custom value, site address, documents is going to be library list name, and ID is item. So quite quickly, we've been able to build that flow and set up that dynamic data, and I can save that. I jump over to the Encodian account portal, onto Trigr configuration, click add action, select my demo, send email, and I'll accept the defaults. we don't want it to appear in lists, so we'll just click create. That's automatically been created for me. And now if I go back here and refresh, I should now be able to see that extra action that's been added in. I can click start. And what we'll see on the Power Automate flow that's been started, and we can see that one's fired and we can see the data that's gone in, we'll see all of that dynamic data passed in. So we've got, let's have a look at the raw output. We can see the SharePoint site, the library, what ID was selected, who the emailer was, and the file identifier, so on and so forth. So hopefully that gives you a really good understanding of the when a user runs a Trigr action and the data that it returns. If you'd like more details, you can go to the Encodian support portal, and if you go to the Trigr section and look at administration and configuration, there is an article on when a user runs a Trigr overview, and that explains the Trigr in a little bit more detail, and also all of the data that's going to be provided. One thing to watch out for is if you've selected one or more files, is that item, if you've selected, say, 10 files, item will always be the first selected, item will be the first selected list item or file, and the file identifier, again, if you've selected, say, 9 files, then the file identifier probably would have the first file within that array. File identifiers would contain all of them. So, of course, if you have any more questions, please ping us at support@encodian.com, and we'd be delighted to help.